Thanks for coming. So we
Yeah,
are
thank you.
live. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Fine. Good to have you. So you're welcome to today's show. I hope you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. So hello to my viewers and to everyone out there that will have the opportunity to join us. My name is Susanna Olatunji Komolafe, and today I have a guest with me that I'm going to be chatting with on conversation with Susanna. And we're going to be talking everything about African identity, what it is when we say African identity. So her name is Sandre Uwaze Dario. Did I pronounce that well?
Yeah, it's Uwasan the hero. Yeah.
Yeah, Umwanse Saduro. Okay, so you're welcome. And hi, Sandra. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, so good to have you today. Tell us a little bit, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sandrine Uwasan the hero, and I am a second year PhD student in contemporary African literature in UL. I'm originally from Rwanda, have lived in Kenya, and I'm now living in Ireland.
So thank you so much for that. Talk to us more about what you do. What are the things you're doing?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I'm a PhD researcher, but aside of PhD, I've found myself in the last year doing a lot of activism work. So just in regards to centering Afro Irish voices and identities, and like just talking about different issues such as racism. So I recently co-founded and co-produced a documentary called Unsilencing Black Voices with my friend Catherine Osokoya from Nigeria. So in the documentary, it was around 25 minutes long, where we got different people from around Ireland. So I think it was around 20 different participants, where we asked them to recall 1 minute of a racist incident that they can remember. And in that, we were trying to showcase how no matter like if you've lived in Ireland for a day, or if you've lived here all of your life or born here, like if you're Afro Irish, like the racism that you experienced there. So it was just to do with that, with as like an educational tool, because we were able to get the documentary out to different primary schools, secondary schools, and throughout college. And ever since the documentary, then I've just been doing different forms of activism. So just even started a new literary magazine, because I believe that writing is like one of the most powerful tools of activism, and I think I just get that from my love for African literature. So yeah, that's what I do. Just a student and then an activist as well.
You mentioned briefly there about the magazine. Tell us, what is the name of the magazine?
Yeah, so the magazine is called Unapologetic. So with that, I started that with my friend Gareth Bryn, who's like an MA in technical writing, and Professor Margaret Harper, who's in UL as well. And in that, we just saw that we wanted to create like a new community, a new safe space for minority voices, and voices which are like on the fringe of society and are not taken as seriously when they are talking about Irish discourses, and kind of create a place where they can come in and talk about different issues such as homophobia, xenophobia, racism, identity, the changing nature of it. And so we're hoping to launch in October. So it's a really exciting time now, because we're accepting submissions now. We've gotten a few submissions. So it's really exciting to see people taking on that challenge of kind of reclaiming their voices.
Just as you were talking about the magazine, one thing that I wanted to just clarify in terms of the magazine is that is it an online magazine or is it something
Yeah, so for the first issue, it's definitely going to be
where can
online,
people
because
get it?
yeah, so with the first issue, it's going to definitely be online, just due to like COVID restrictions, and with just in regards to different financial situation. So we'll be going live with the website on that, as I said, in October. But then like in the years to come, we do hope to print. So we'll be able to see next year. But like just for now, we're like very excited. We're kind of taking the opportunity with COVID, with everything being online, and marketing it towards that.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, hopefully, that the magazine is going to be a platform whereby you can radicalize what it is to have be an African, and at the same time, those unseen voices can become as radical as they could in expressing views in terms of things in general, so that
Mhm.
it's just it's just a platform whereby your freedom is there for you to, yeah. Thank you for that. So that takes me to the next question. What does African identity means to you? When we say African identity, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me the first thing that just pops into my mind is just like a deep rooted sense of tradition and culture. I think it's something that growing up in Ireland, being both Rundees and Irish, had always really struggled with that, trying to understand that. But like the older I've gotten, like just understanding different Rundees traditions and just culture and just how it's just one of those things, like it'll never die because it's always going to be passed down from generation to generation. So I think like that's the really beautiful thing about that, just that deep rooted connection with tradition. And just, yeah, so it's just those different customs, like I think like they're really a strong part on like my understanding of my African identity.
Now, we talk about African identity, and it's something that, as a young African, I'm hoping that it's something very strong,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sure of who you are as an African. Now, then we can as well talk about, you were talking about the unsilencing of Black voices. So I say the African voices in Ireland, what impact are they making? Are they making any impact? If there's any, let us know. Are we heard in terms of those are voices? Is it being heard? And how do you define what African voice means to you? So first is about we understand what African identity is, whereby an opportunity, but are we making impact? That's the first thing. Secondly, do you think we're being heard? And the other thing I want you to just touch briefly on is that how do you define what African voice means to you?
Yeah, so like in regards to the first question, like I think like especially with first generation migrants and Africans in Ireland, so like people my age, I definitely think we are tackling a lot of social issues very head on, because again it's that sense of like enough is enough, where we've seen how our parents have navigated being in Ireland, and then we've seen how growing up, like the different discourses that exist within the Irish system. So I do think that first generation are making a massive change, because they're having these conversations which we never had before. Like our parents' generation wouldn't, like from personal interest, like were there, like they wouldn't have had these conversations with racism. It's kind of one of those things. It's like you just have to deal with it. But then our generation is asking questions and is pushing for that, and is pushing for their voices to be heard. And in regards to their voices being heard, I think in certain discourses, yes. So like I know myself, like in my academic setting, it is like we are having discussions like in regards to decolonizing the curriculum, what it means, even if you're like a primary and secondary school teacher, like of the dangerous and harmful way of teaching about the topic of Africa in a helpless victim mentality, and like what that means to students. So, and the teachers are willing to listen and are inviting you to different platforms to talk about your own lived experiences, but then also about the different research you're doing. So it is taking time, and it is going to take time. Like that's how change happens. But I do think that in certain spheres, so I can only speak from my academic sphere, like they are listening, and I can see more willingness to understand, like, okay, so Ireland is multicultural, Ireland is diverse, and it is changing. So like in regards to the way we're teaching the curriculum, that should reflect on the Ireland's social issues. And just in regards then to the last question, like the definition of African voice, I think especially just within the Irish context is that duality that we have, and how again just experience and the need for change. I think that's how African voices is defined, because we're kind of only now is it that I know myself
Internet.
and my friends, that only now is like when we're really having those conversations about like, okay, what does the African identity mean, and like again differentiating between Africanness and Blackness, and before we wouldn't never have had those conversations. So I think there we're like sitting down, they're uncomfortable conversations, because again, it's like, if you don't understand how race or anything like that, it's like, okay, I'm Black, but then it's like, no, you're African. And again, just having those discussions. So I do think there's progress there, but like it does take time. But our generation are like having those really uncomfortable discussions.
Yeah, and it's interesting for you to say that, because I know I would say for our own generations that it wasn't as if we were silent, but coming to Ireland is a different territory totally, and the experience of I call us new African diaspora in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always better to just talk from our own experiences as new African diaspora, because in Ireland, when you talk about Africans that have lived in Ireland, they've come in batches in different forms. We have Africans that have come in mainly as domestic workers, and that has been
Mm-hmm.
ages ago that has happened. We've had the reasons for when slavery was going on. It has been a passage. There's been a passage of slavery from Ireland to UK and UK to America. So that transit has happened within, but it hasn't been a home for them. But the transits have taken place. And recently, we know that some Irish they also benefit from the slavery trade as well, but not as prominent as in when we talk about. Sorry for that. So not as prominent as if when we talk about other Africans, as in terms of we're having now, is quite different. And
Mm-hmm.
you're totally right when you talk about the fact that the young generations of African, they are just out there. They are doing us so proud. You're so humble to see that they are actually breaking the barrier as quicker than we can even imagine. So I think the territory in Ireland is an open space whereby it can be exploited, and our voices, in terms of, say, when we define our voices in Ireland, the speed is very slow, but there's definitely assurance that it's going to really blossom into the air. So that is an interesting aspect of what it means to talk about our African identity, and you're not afraid to talk about it. You're not afraid to bring up this conversation in places whereby you would think it shouldn't be. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you have conversation with Irish people themselves within this environment that we are, you will totally see that, well, they are totally illiterate in terms of when you talk about Africa. They don't even have full knowledge of what it is, what Africa means to them as well, or
Mm-hmm.
what Africa is itself as a continent. They don't have that full knowledge of what it is. So I think we also have that responsibility to start talking about it. But one of the things that I think we're doing is that changing it in terms of educational perspective, finding a way to start changing that knowledge, educating people. You did a post-colonial readings of the concept of futuristic.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what does that mean?
Yeah, so in regards to the way my PhD research
And when you talk about it,
yeah, so just in regards to my PhD research, I look at the concept of the future, and in that regards, it's just because like from any Western scholars or like novels that I would have read like in college or anything like that, there was always that perception of like, oh, the African future has come and gone, and Africa's future is always going to be Europeans' past. So I just delve into that, and I look at how post-colonialism, like in regards to the failed post-colonial dreams that had happened after liberation and freedom per se. So I just look at that and see like, what does the African future mean, and what way do Africans in the continent conceive of a future, and how different that is then to the one that here in the West we think of and consider as the future. So like and just exploring it from just different angles and just different African countries, so such as like Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya and Congo, and just seeing how people interact with it. And like with that, then I just kind of go back to just the theory of time. And again, like within the African continent, in regards to prophecies, oral traditions, everything like that, like there's always time is weaving in and out. So like past, present, and future. So it's just by looking at all of them and how, again, like the African understands their place in the world, but then also their place in them accessing that future.
Yeah, you're totally right. The time futuristic is in what is our expectation. So, in
Mm-hmm.
summary, just give me, where do you think you want us to be? One, where do you think, which is a very, this is just going to be a guess. Where do you think you want Africa to be in the future? That's number one. And secondly, where do you want Africans in the diaspora? And when I say African in the diaspora, I'm specifically talking about African and Irish, being African and Irish. What do you think would be the futuristic for us?
Yeah, I think definitely in the
What do you think that would be the futuristic?
yeah, I definitely think to just start off with the Afro Irish is just, again, just being at a level of comfort and strength in regards to just understanding that duality, because I just think there is strength in that and there's confidence in that when you know, like, you are Rwandese and Irish, and you're able to just have the two pieces of your identity and love yourself in that regard. Because only then, like, once you accept that, is when you can be proudly dual in that regard. And then that's when you can just start having these conversations without, like, your sense of Africanness being threatened or your sense of Irishness. So it's just that, it's just kind of continuing that on that dialogue. And then in regards to just Africa in general, it is just, for me, it's just from like a Western perspective, it's just having a better understanding of the African continent and really moving away from this troubled notion of how, like, Africans are always just waiting around just for the benevolence of the West and to be saved, and just understanding how within the African continent, like, people there, like, they do, as I say, like, have a mind of themselves and are able to just contribute so much into society that it is going to help inform the West. So it's just understanding that power and magnitude that Africans have, whether or not it is within the African continent itself, but then also within the Irish setting.
Yeah, that is just, that is just another way to look at it in terms of what the future might hold for us as Africans, especially living here in Ireland and in the continent itself, because it's so obvious that the continent itself needs a lot of changes and it needs to wake up. I said I use a team. We were talking about doing a program when we were doing the African Day celebration last month. I think the theme we went for was Africa Wake Up. It is time for Africa as a continent to really wake up, because what is the need of having all these resources? What is the need of being the second largest in the world in terms of population, in terms of land space, and yet we're not making any impact, and all our resources are being utilized by other country, and they are using it actually wisely than we are using it. Thank you very much for that. The next question I'm going to ask you is this:
Mm-hmm.
you are an African and Irish, so you have the identity of an African as an African, and at the same time known as Irish. What advice will you give to other African Irish young ones like yourself that are, that either those ones that were born here or those ones that came here to become African Irish, and now they are growing. A lot of people come into work and they get their nationality, being an African Irish person. What advice will you give to them? As in, what will it take on?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just understanding the difference between, like, nationality and ethnicity. So, like, as I said, it's like nationality, it's like, yes, you are Irish, but then, like, ethnicity, then, like, for myself, I'm Rwandese. And just, as I said, it's just embracing that dual element, because I think in Ireland, which I think for African population, I think we're like 1.9% of the population. So it's still very, very small. And I think it is where at any given time, if you're talking to someone,
You mean, sorry, do
and
you mean in terms of
just the
No, go ahead. Yeah.
population.
1 point something. Yeah, in Ireland. You're talking about in
Yeah.
Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah, so here in Ireland, so like you just have to understand, like at any given time, like the moment like someone meets you, just on the bare like element of just your skin color, like they will be like, where are you from? And it's like you'll say Carol, and they're like, no, where are you really from? And like sometimes at times like that, it kind of feels like it's that your Irish identity is being invalidated in that moment. But like if you embrace that dual identity, then you just know yourself that you are Irish, and you don't need someone else to tell you about that you're not, or you are. So like that'll be just the advice that I would give, because I think, as I said earlier at the start, like it took me a long time to just embrace the two that I have and just be
Yeah.
proudly Rundies and Irish. So it's just, but it's a
African
journey
and
of,
being Irish as well. Yeah.
yeah, but like it's a journey of self growth and self love, and until you understand like your tradition, and until you understand your culture, both cultures, as I said, then you'll just have like a better sense of self. But as I say, like I'm 26 and it's only taken me till now to figure that out. So it's like just be patient with yourself, but then just love the dual element that you have.
Now, I have to say that sometimes I feel there's no reason for us to take offense when somebody says, where are you originally from? Because I think it's a question, and it shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be an offense, something that offends us. Sometimes is the way it is being put to you that could offend you, could feel like, okay, but you have two identity. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, start embracing it. Understand the fact that you're Africa and you're Irish. So if somebody asks you, where are you originally from? You should be proud to say, yeah, I'm originally from Africa. I'm from this part of Africa, but now I live in Ireland and I have my nationality as an
Yeah.
Irish person. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
don't.
about
Yeah.
embracing.
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I understand what you mean. Yeah, I think for me it isn't like, oh, I'm ashamed of it, but it's just that sense. It's like it should be up to me to tell you. Like as I say, like some people I meet, I could be like, oh yeah, I'm from Carlo, but I'm originally from Rwanda, but like that's my thing. It's the sense like if I'm like I'm from Carlo and I have my Carlo accent and everything, and it's like, no, you're not. And that's what I mean, like when I'm like I won't feel the
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
say it if you're like you can't be Irish because you look like this. But if it's a genuine question and we're all talking, then I've always
yeah.
been like, oh yeah, no, I'm Rundese, you know. So again, it's just reading the room in that regards, and just knowing what's people's truest intention when they are asking where are you
When they're
originally from.
asking the questions, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's all about the intention, because sometimes even just asking that question, it's a simple thing to say. It's a simple question that we can take literally the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about just saying that, I know that if there's a way it can be thrown to you that can make you feel like taken back and say, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like you were explaining that, hey, I'm from Carlo, and that person say, okay, yes, is that where you live now? You said yes. I said, oh, but then he
Mm-hmm.
can ask you, I just want to know what part of Africa you're. So instead of them saying, where are you, they should just ask you directly that, I guess you were originally from Africa. What part of Africa are
Yeah.
you from? And
Yeah,
then
but
they,
a lot of yeah, a lot of the times they don't ask you though, like where are you
in that
originally
way,
from?
yeah,
Yeah, it's always like, no, where are you really from? Do you know? So it's like
yeah,
they refuse to accept Ireland. And like as I said, it's happened to my little brothers, and like they're born in Ireland and they'll be like Kilkenny, and I'll be like, where are you really from? They're like Kilkenny, do you know, because that's them. And then they're
that's
like,
that's the
oh,
difference. Yeah.
and then they're like, oh, you mean my parents? Because again, like they weren't born in Africa. So like
They were born in
yeah,
Africa,
yeah. So and then they'll explain like, oh yeah, my parents are from Rwanda. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so I know that sometimes it could be tricky, but I
Mhm.
think we just have to learn to grow to rather than to take it to heart and to just be diplomatically in a way, the way we correct their own conscious. I know people said unconscious bias, but I think for me, I see that as a conscious bias, because they are quite aware of what they are saying. They know the answer they are asking you, because
Mhm.
to them, they believe that there's no way you can have a dark skin and be an Irish person. So that
Mhm.
is either you got it by nationality. They already know the answer, but they just want you to they just want to be a bit cheeky about you saying it, because they already
Mhm.
know the answer. answer. But I think there's better ways they can construct that so that at any time somebody is being asked, you don't feel taken back about it. You just give them an answer to whatever they are asking for. So,
Mm-hmm.
you won't leave without me asking you, what is your take on the word racism and policing today? Now, today, which is the 21st of June, the family of George Kenshaw, this morning, they did a process to call for a public inquest into the death expected, I believe, quite in the afternoon. So today it should be a significant date in the life of the
Mm-hmm.
parents and in our community as a whole, because they call out for, there's a protest going that went this morning in with regards to calling for a public inquest into his death. So the word racism and policing, well, and when I mean policing, I mean the brutality behind policing here in Highland and how it affects us as a community. And the word racism itself, because it's not just us as African that the word racism does affect, but I think it is more significant with us. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to racism in Ireland, there's still a disconnect with people understanding the terminology of it within an Irish context versus an American context, because I think we're still using a lot of the terminology that you see in America and it's being applied to Ireland. But like as you say, like in Ireland, like racism isn't something that just affects the Black community. Like it's affected the traveller community for like centuries, even before Black people were in Ireland. So I think it's just understanding that and understanding like the different nuanced ways that racism is visible in the Irish context, and just understanding like what ways to combat that. Because as I said, like a lot of the times, even when we saw Black Lives Matter last year, and that's a term from adopted from America, and we were still using within the Irish context without understanding its full perimeter of it. Because yes, like with policing, like with George Nichenko, what happened, like within the Irish context, it was shocking, but then within the American context, that's a walk in the park. Like that's something that happens all the time. So
Every
like,
day, yeah.
yeah, and I remember when I'd seen the passing of George Nichenko, I literally just scrolled past because I was like, oh, that's just in America. Because I was like, I'm just so used to that, until someone was like, no, that happened in Ireland.
In
And
Ireland.
yeah, and my first thought was like, oh my God, we're not immune to that. Because that was the one thing, since police here in Ireland don't carry guns, that was kind of my thing. I was like, we'll never get to that
Never
point of,
get that kind of, yeah.
yeah, like we'll never get to that point of BLM. And then it happened, and straight away, again, like that's why I was saying, like there was such a disconnect with how people couldn't see how George Nichenko with BLM like mattered, because and yet they had no problem saying George Floyd in America. But again, it's just because some people are arguing that, like, you know, within the word racism, it's just been something that has come up overnight in the last year. So like it's like, okay, just give people time to catch up. But for me, I call that bullshit, because it's always happened. And that's why I give the Irish traveller the example. Like they have always experienced that. So it's like,
They've
it's
always
not
experienced it, yeah.
yes, I was like, it's not a new terminology. It's just that people are speaking out now. And that's why it's shaking things up. And that's why it's like, oh, we can't say anything racist in Ireland anymore. I'm like, but it's been done. Like, look at Direct Provision. Like, that's a racist institution, and different things like that. So I do think, like, if you'd been on social media with the passing of George Nichenko, it's just the things that were printed out straight away. I was like, that's like dehumanizing of the Black body, which again, it's not a new term. Like if you look at it before, whenever, and like even with that, they were very quick to just be like, oh, a Nigerian person. And then I'm like, he was Irish. It's again, like they took away that Irishness within that dehumanizing element. But as I say, like people just weren't able to put the connection there, or even try to understand how the Black community was saying that this was something that was racist. They just would not put the two and two together yet. In America, you could be like, yes, what happened there was racist, but in Ireland, no.
Now, thank you so much. It was great to have you. And before you go, I just want you to again give a message out there in terms of our local police. What we as young people, or what we you as a young person is expecting them, and how you feel you should be treated. One or two lines, and then what will you say to people out there? The word racism, that is something we should be more aware about. So if you want to give a message then.
Yeah, I just think in regards to just George Zinchenko, is just for me, like the first thing that comes out is just transparency, and it's just, as I say, just being transparent and giving the family like what they have asked for, because again, he was treated in a dehumanized manner, like take race out of it within the sense of it, it was dehumanizing. So that'll be the first thing. So it's just transparency, because like lack of transparency will just create dishonesty within the African community that again will just create tensions there. And then just in regards to everyone else when it comes to racism, it's just really to just understand how racism works in Ireland and not adopting like the same methodologies or terminologies that we use in America within the Irish context, and just really understanding that within Ireland, when it comes to racism, it goes beyond the African community. Like there's other minorities which are affected by that as well.
Thank you so much for what you said. And this afternoon, I'll just say to the audience, any of you that will have the opportunity to watch this, a very big time to my guest, Sandrine Waze Indario. I think I pronounced that very well. And for myself, Susanna. So this is my message out there today, which is the 21st of June, 2021. There's a protest going on that went on this morning in support of the family of George Nkenshaw with regard to calling for a public inquest into the death of their son, George Nkenshaw, who died on this last year, December 30th, 2020, at around 12:30 p.m. He was shot down with 6 bullets by the police. It is time for us to call out this brutality within the police system here in Ireland. Now, you heard what my guest said. This is something we never thought will ever happen in Ireland, but it did happen, and we're hoping it's not going to continue, or that this will be the last of it. Also, we talked today about African identity. What is African identity to you, to me, and to us as African? I think we need to start embracing those duality of our identity as African and Irish. So don't be afraid to embrace it. You're African, and that is something you should be proud of. And with your Irish identity as well, it is something you can speak of. So watch out for us on Susanna, with Conversation with Susanna. And hopefully that next time I have another guest whereby we can explore and have more conversation about what it is to be African here in Ireland. So thank you for everyone that has watched. If you have questions, you can always send it to us through our email. All the details is just on the heading for this show. Or you can go to our website, the Afro Diaspora website, which is www.artcenter.highland.com. And you can also send us messages or questions that you need a bit of clarification. Or if you want to be part of this conversation at adcenter25@yahoo.ie. So thank you. It's Susanna again. And hi, bye to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now. Thanks.